Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Smishek's Custom Baits. Rick Smishek here. We have a change of venue again. Involuntary change, but yeah, we're in a storage unit. I'll explain that on next week or the next video, which will be tomorrow. But yeah, the wind. It's cold. It's windy outside. The wind is blowing into the storage unit, so that's why the door is closed. Hopefully, the lighting is okay. We have one light bulb here, so hopefully we won't. If the lighting is too bad, I'll see what I can do about that to fix that. But that's probably going to be a little bit limited. But let's go ahead and get started on today's video. Knowing Bass, Chapter 1 or Chapter 6, Part 1. Chapter 6 and Chapter 7, there are various parts where I'll be referring to my notes and essentially reading off of them to make sure I get everything right, because it's probably a little bit too much to memorize. But I want to make sure I get it right. So so bear with me on that. Bear with me on the sound of the wind against the door. It's 44 degrees outside and feels like 31 with the wind. Okay. My hands are cold, really cold. But I'm dressed fairly warm for the rest of it. So we'll live. It won't be nearly as bad as this night I spent out in my tent. I'll tell you about that next video. All right. So chapter 6. It'll be four episodes again. Chapter 7 is 3 or 4, and then chapter 8, which is the final chapter of the book, we will not be going into that because it doesn't it's not relevant to this discussion of how to become better fishermen. Chapter 8 talks about the possibility of one day making super lures that are they'll probably be so effective that they get banned for bass tournaments. But that's down the road. That probably it's not going to happen tomorrow, or probably next week or next year. But the author thinks it will eventually happen. So, what's chapter 6 about? Chapter 6 is about the senses of the skin, okay, and what bass monitor through their skin. Right. Some of the various things that bass do monitor, and then we'll read this part basically, are temperature, pH, oxygen, salinity, depth, light, and water clarity. I wonder what the heck's going on with that. Somebody out there at the storage facility. Now, obviously, they don't monitor all of those things with their skin, but these are things that they do monitor. The total range that they're tolerant of, and then their preferred range for the temperature are from near freezing to 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Preferred range is 80 to 90. pH is from 4 to 10. The preferred range is from 7.4 to 8.1 with a question mark after 8.1. The question mark is because the research has only gone that far. Okay, we don't know if they also like 9.0 up to 9.0 or not, whatever. So oxygen is 1.5 to 24 parts per million, but they prefer greater than 5. Salinity, fresh water to 24 parts per ton, or I mean per trillion. I do that every time. I rehearsed this ahead of time, and every single time I've said parts per ton instead of parts per trillion. But juveniles prefer fresh water, and adults prefer 3 parts per trillion. See, I got it right that time. Barely. Depth, they prefer from less than 1 foot to greater than 200, or they're tolerant of that, but they prefer less than 20 feet. Light, from full dark to full light, but they prefer dawn, dusk, and overcast conditions that mimic dawn and dusk. Water clarity, they're tolerant from extremely muddy to spring-fed crystal clear waters, but they prefer slightly turbid to clear. Sensations of the skin that are important to this discussion are temperature and pH. Okay, no natural body of water is uniform. There are vertical and horizontal gradients in every single body of water. Examples of this are say in a large reservoir, the upper tributaries will be warmer and they will warm sooner than the depths of the reservoir and the lower tributaries and the coves down there. This explains why bass in a given body of water don't all spawn at the same time. The entire population doesn't just up and say, hey, let's go spawn. No, it's populations in the upper reaches will spawn sometimes several weeks sooner than bass in the lower reaches. And my fingers are pretty cold, so it's, there we go, got it. Individual environmental factors, they don't vary independently of each other, okay? Things like water clarity affects the oxygen levels because the light can't, when the water's dirtier, the light can't penetrate as far. So you don't get the same amount of oxygen production from plants because the plants aren't growing in as deep of water as opposed to water that's crystal clear down to 50 feet. You know, plants can grow in deeper water. There's higher oxygen levels, et cetera, et cetera. This also applies to temperature. Um, sunlight is the primary um, source of heat for water, but other things such as, and then we'll make sure get this one right, substrate, depth, suspended organic matter, and the evaporative cooling effects of wind and wave action all affect water temperature. Okay, so a lot of wave action, a lot of wind helps cool off the water. Also, man-made effects of like discharges from dams and from power plants. The first one cools the water. The second one warms it. Uh, Cold water, I'm surprised by this. Cold water can hold more oxygen than hot water. Exceptions to this are below the thermocline and when you have a heavy ice cover on frozen lakes and snow cover on top of that too. Um, then you just don't get the light penetration for the plant growth, and the plants die off, and not only are they no longer producing oxygen, but now they're decomposing and sucking up oxygen. So those are the two main exceptions to that rule. But because of the fact that all these conditions can change, um, concurrently with each other, this is just reinforces that us as fishermen need to try to take into account as many of these factors as we possibly can in order to have successful days on the water. When it comes to pH, we're going to keep it simple. I'm not going to get into any scientific stuff. 7.0 is neutral. Anything below that is acidic. Anything above that is basic. Now, I think most of us know that, like on the Richter scale for earthquakes, 7.0 earthquake is not as strong as a 7.1, but the 7.1 is also 10 times stronger than the 7.0, all right? So with pH, the further away you get from neutral, from 7.0, the more exponential the increase in acid, let's just say acid, or basic levels, right? For example, 5.0 is 10 times more acidic than 6.0, but 4.0 is 100 times more acidic than 6.0. Okay. When it comes to the pH, soft water versus hard water. Hard water is when you have minerals that have dissolved into the water, including salt. The harder the water, to a point, the more resistant it is to drastic changes in the pH levels. And I don't know, I'll have to look, but I don't know if fish finders can tell you what the pH levels are, at least at the surface. I know they can tell you what the what the temperature is at the surface. But we have to keep in mind that that's just at the surface, and the further down you go, the cooler the water gets. Okay. So, with this said, that's the end of today's video. Next week we'll pick up. For next week's video, we'll pick up right where we left off, and if you guys could share the videos, that'd be great. You hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That helps the channel out. I think this morning it was 831 subscribers. Pardon me, almost 1,900 hours watched. Thank you very much to everybody who watches, everybody who hits that like and subscribe button. I appreciate every one of you. And until next time, folks, tight lines, calm waters, and God bless.